is we often like to put the pressure on the family courts, but the family courts are not mental health specialists.
Correct.
And because they are not mental health specialists, they don't seem to really do their jobs effectively.
You're listening to the Nacho Kids podcast, where we discuss all things step-family related. Real stories, real people, real help. Your hosts are the creators of the Nacho Kids Method and the Nacho Kids Academy step-family coaching team, Lori and David Sims.
Welcome to the Nacho Kids podcast, episode 253. Now, before we get started today, I have to tell you that Lori is under the weather, so she is not going to be in this intro. And in fact, we won't even have an outro. We'll get right into the interview here shortly. But I did want to throw in a little bit of value up front. Since she's not here to banter with me, I wanted to cover something that I thought everybody might enjoy considering and thinking about. Something that comes up quite frequently when we're coaching couples is how to deal with some of the emotions that come up when we have problems within our blended family. And so what I wanted to do is give you 12 questions that you can ask yourself when you have this rise of emotions inside of you. So let's go over these. The first question to ask yourself is, what exactly are you feeling? So try to name the emotion that you're experiencing. Is it anger or sadness or fear or jealousy or even something else? Try to be very, very specific about that. There are 4 basic emotions. So if you can't come up with anything else, the 4 basic ones are happiness, sadness, fear, and anger. So try to figure out what those are. Now, interestingly enough, there's also a correlation between the 4 basic emotions and also how the 3 core effects kind of go hand in hand and they're associated. For example, with happiness, we attribute that to like a reward. And then with sadness, that's like a punishment. And then with stress, that's the fear and anger. So if you take the 4 emotions, happiness is like a reward, sadness is like punishment, and then fear and anger are a stress. So keep that in mind, because when you start feeling things, like if you say, I'm feeling angry or I'm feeling fearful, you know that is a stressor. Typically, that's something going on in your life that's causing stress, and that's why it feels that way. Whereas if you're like, I feel sadness, then that's something that could be more along the lines of there's something that's more of a punishing type emotion or something that's going on in your life that might feel that way. I like to look at these things, emotions, kind of like a box of crayons, in that you can get, a box of crayons that are 8 colors, for example. But if you want more complex colors, then you can mix those things together. So sometimes our emotions are similar in that they are often mixed, and it may not be something that's so clear cut. And that's why asking these questions of yourselves is very helpful. So the second one would be asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? So consider what triggered your emotion. Is it due to a very specific event? Is it a thought? Because we often get very emotional about things that are simply thoughts, and it may not be anything that's actually happening, or it may be your misinterpretation of what's happening or your perception of what's happening. Or maybe it's something that somebody said, but certainly understanding the cause can help you address the root of the emotion. Number 3, what is this emotion telling me? Because emotions can signal a lot of things, but it definitely signals that something needs your attention. For example, anger might indicate that you feel a boundary's been crossed, while sadness might signify a sense of loss. So ask yourself that question. Number 4, is my reaction proportional to the situation? As we like to say often, are you giving things the right emotional weight? So sometimes our emotional responses are influenced by our past experiences, how we see things, rather than just the current situation. So by reflecting on this, it can help you to gauge if your response is appropriate. Number 5, what are your thoughts that are accompanying this emotion? So often our emotions are fueled by our thoughts. So are you jumping to conclusions, or is there evidence to support how you feel? Often I ask myself the question of, is it the truth? You'd be surprised how many times you're feeling something inside about something you perceive or something that even you heard, but it's really not true. So ask yourself that. Number 6, how do I want to respond to this feeling? So think about the outcomes that you desire. What action, if any, would be most helpful for you and others involved? This question often shifts your focus from reacting impulsively to responding thoughtfully. And we definitely want to move away from reactions and more toward thoughtful response. Number 7, what would I advise a friend to do in this situation? Now, I love this question because I use this in different areas, not just emotional. Like, how would I advise a friend? What would I tell a friend to do in this same situation? Because sometimes looking at it from the outsider's perspective can help you think more clearly about your next steps. Number 8, what can I learn from this emotion? Every emotional experience has the potential for growth. So consider what insights that you can gain from this situation. It's amazing how well you can learn yourself and learn how things impact you, and then what you can do about those things when you really slow down to understand how you can learn from those things that are causing that emotional rise that you have. Number 9, is there a way to channel this emotion productively? For instance, if you're feeling anger, could you use that energy for constructive activity like exercise or advocating for a cause that you care about? Or like in my house, it seems like when we have the emotions of anger or anxiety, oftentimes that displays itself in cleaning up. when there's like a rush to start cleaning stuff a lot, somebody's not feeling well. There's something that's bothering them. Lori and I both do that. So number 10, what do I need right now to feel better? So identifying your needs can be a crucial step in self-care. For example, do you need to talk to somebody? Do you need to take a break? Maybe you need to go outside and get some fresh air. But what is it that you need right now that will make you feel better? Number 11, how can I practice self-compassion in this moment? So being kind to yourself. Acknowledge that it is okay to have strong emotions and that you're doing your best to manage them. And again, back to learning how that you're managing these things will help you the next time so that when you have a similar emotion, you can do all these things a lot faster to bring your emotions back down and under control. And then the last one is, can I let this emotion go, or do I need to take action? Sometimes simply acknowledging your feelings is enough, while other times you might need to take some kind of specific action to address the underlying causes. So there's 12 questions you can ask yourself when you feel like a rise in emotions happening that will help you better understand what's going on, how to respond to it, and how to do these things in a healthy way. So there you have it. So now let's get to today's interview.
Today, we welcome Chris to our podcast. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So you're here to share about parental alienation.
Yes.
So tell us your story.
So I've been a part of the shared parenting movement for quite some time. I think ever since I separated from my ex, and our daughter is now in grade 7 now. So it's been a good 12 years of dealing with parental alienation. So generally speaking, what I do is I am a moderator for a number of, I guess, Facebook groups, which has been very successful in being able to I guess, rally a lot of other parents who are experiencing things that they really don't know how to address. For example, I believe you guys have reached out to us through Malicious Moms and Parental Alienation.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have our sister site, which deals with pathogenic parenting as well. And a lot of the information that we have, we collaborate with a lot of experts. Dr. Childress is a very great source. Dr. Barnett is another expert in the field. Jennifer Harmon. A lot of people have come together with research about parental alienation and how it affects the relationship between your children, yourself, and the ex. So I just read a little bit about the blended family Nacho Kids, and I think I've seen a little bit of an interview before with you guys. So I really do like the work that you guys are doing, because it's about trying to navigate, I guess, navigating separation as somebody who doesn't necessarily have, like, as a blended family, somebody who is a step parent or something
Right.
like that, right? So when it comes to being a step parent, there is a lot of stuff that can come up in terms of high conflict parenting and parental alienation.
Right.
There is a lot of concerns. I know that when my partner and I were, when I introduced my partner to our daughter, our daughter wasn't really sure exactly what to call her, right? So we had been dating for a while. We dated just enough to really get to know each other, and I felt really good about her being able to meet our daughter. And when I introduced her, the two of them really do love each other. So
Mm-hmm.
they did develop a very strong bond, right?
That's great.
So,
Yeah.
and definitely, but there's definitely the challenges that come along with that in terms of what are the boundaries. The biggest problem with parental alienation is that there's clearly an issue with setting boundaries. And you can find yourself on the wrong side of that if you are a person who doesn't know exactly what those boundaries are. And my understanding of this Nacho Kids is basically a way of saying this is not your kid, but you
Mm-hmm.
still love this child.
Yes, it is. And
Right.
some people will say they don't love their stepkids, which at one
Yeah.
point I didn't. It's
Right.
hard to love kids that you feel like are trying to destroy your life.
Yes.
So, but the goal is to build healthy relationships amongst everyone in the blend.
Absolutely. Yes.
So let me ask you this. You and your ex, apparently your child was fairly young when y'all split up.
Mhm.
Do
Yes.
y'all live near each other?
It is something where we are living at least within an hour of each other. And that is important to basically be able to do enough exchanges and spend enough time with our daughter, right?
Right.
So
So how often do you get your daughter?
right now I am fully alienated. So I am
I'm
not.
so sorry.
Yeah, it is something that is a very sad thing. But the thing about it is I understand exactly what some of these issues are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, it really boils down to boundaries. And so, for example, I guess you can say one of the issues that we would come across is our daughter, even though she very much loved my partner and stuff like that. It was very hard for her to take in the rules that we had within our own home, right? So
Right. Because the rules were different at mom's house.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the alienation, when you have a parent who is high conflict and who is basically telling the child that those rules don't apply, and even when you're with that parent, those rules still don't apply. You don't have to listen to his partner. She's not your mom. You don't have to listen to that person's partner. She's not your dad. No, that's crossing a boundary, right?
Right. Well, I mean, basically, she's telling the kid, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to listen to your dad or his partner.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is a serious part of alienation. Another thing that some people, when they have that person in their life who is basically, when that person spends time with the child and the child is then forced to call that person mom or dad when they really know that they're not their mom or dad, that's
Right.
also crossing a boundary, which is something that even targeted parents can make. That's a
Mhm.
mistake that some parents make.
Right.
Your partner, the child has one mom, one dad, and
Right.
they should understand that. And yes, it is the parent who is supposed to take on the responsibility of discipline. It is the parent who is supposed to take on the responsibility of caretaker. It's that person's responsibility. It's not the
Right.
other person's responsibility. And if you're the step parent, you have to also understand those boundaries, because it's a very hard thing to not get involved,
It
especially.
is.
Yeah.
And that's what we teach and through the Nacho Kids Academy too, is it's not that you don't matter as a step parent.
Mhm.
It's just that's just not your role.
That's right.
It's not your role in the aspect from how the kids look at it. And your partner may say, yes, I want you to treat them like your own. But the first time you pop little Johnny's butt, you're going to have an issue because he didn't mean that way.
Yeah.
He meant in the good ways.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you can treat him just like your own in every way except for discipline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing, is what are some of the good ways, right?
Right.
So I am also a member of our school's advisory committee for the school board.
Hmm.
And generally speaking, there's always the question of, when I'm basically enrolling our child, what role does the step parent have in being able to participate in the child's education, right?
Right.
And things such as being able to, uh, I'm out of Toronto, so our school board does have a policy of inclusion where they understand that whether the parents are together or apart, the children benefit from everybody coming together in order to support the child's education.
Right.
They encourage that. They encourage parental involvement.
Hmm.
That includes step parents. That includes grandparents. That includes aunts and uncles.
Oh,
Uh,
that's great.
it's supposed to be a community thing. It's
Hmm.
something where the child doesn't lose anything from basically being able to have more people support that child in the education. So
Right.
when it comes to, I guess, registration, should the step parent be included in the child's registration? I think so. I believe, and I do believe that there are situations and circumstances where that's accepted, right?
Hmm.
If you've gone through the family court system is going to tell you exactly who the primary parents are.
Right.
And the courts, the schools themselves should have a copy of that order. If no
Yes.
order is not on the child's registration, then the what should be happening is you should be treating it like there is no court order, and that these people, whether they are together or apart, are still committed to this child's education.
Right. And we often talk about how, say, little Susie goes back and forth between mom and dad during the week.
Yes.
And on Tuesday, when she's with dad, he finds out there's a band concert Friday. He takes the piece of paper out telling about the band concert, and he doesn't inform the other parent.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a huge problem.
It is a huge problem.
And this is
And a lot of that could be solved with having a website for the school that shows all these activities, whether it's field trips. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be secure. You should have to have a login and things like that.
Mhm.
But that way there's no, well, he got the paper and I didn't, or he got this drawing and I didn't get anything and I didn't know this was going on. He didn't tell me or she didn't tell me. Because a lot of times it may not even be intentional.
Yep, absolutely.
But the majority of the time it is, oh, I'm going to take this and she won't know about it. So I can go and she won't be there.
Absolutely. So, and this is one of the reasons why I did join the Parent Involvement Committee, is because I wanted to understand exactly how the schools address some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And the school, even though they have a written policy of inclusion, it all really boils down to how the individual school's culture is created. It starts with the principal. It starts with the person who is in charge of running the school.
Right.
So if they believe that they are that in inclusion themselves, then they're going to do everything that they can in order to make sure that that parent is included in the communications.
Right.
Part of the registration is to have the parents both listed. And if you see one parent that is listed and the other is not, you should be asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
And the same thing with when a child is transferred in and out of a school, there should be communication about the child's communication with both parents, that
Right.
this child is going to be going over to this next school.
Right.
And you're right. Absolutely. Now we live in the electronic age. Everything should be done online. And
Yes.
there really is no excuse for a lack of communication between a parent and the child's educators.
Right. And we've seen it too, where, say, for instance, bio mom will contact the teacher and bash bio dad.
Yep.
And then the next thing you know, the teacher won't tell bio dad anything because she's befriended bio mom.
Yep.
That shouldn't be allowed.
And it's not. If you actually understand the parent engagement part of a school and their board,
Mm-hmm.
the only way that a parent should be excluded is if there is a specific court order that prohibits that parent from being a participant in their child's education, which is basically a restraining order.
Right. But unfortunately, it puts the teacher in the middle, because what are they supposed to do? Reply to bio mom and copy dad?
And they're not supposed to get involved. That's
Right.
part of the problem.
Yes, they're getting involved.
They start getting involved. They start taking sides. They start thinking that it's okay in order to communicate with the primary parent without having to communicate with the secondary parent.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that creates a lot of tension, both with the parents, and it causes stress with the child, because this child also has to hide this information.
Yeah, because a lot of times we talk about parental alienation and we talk about how it affects you and how it affects, how bio mom's not doing the right thing, letting it happen, or creating the parental alienation. But we often forget about the kids.
100%, yeah.
And I believe 100% the court system forgets about the kids.
They do. And the problem, I guess you can say, with parental alienation is we often like to put the pressure on the family courts. But the family courts are not mental health specialists.
Correct.
And because they are not mental health specialists, they don't seem to really do their jobs effectively. And what I mean by that is oftentimes high conflict parents end up seeking mental health services somewhere along the lines. Either the child is going to go and get an assessment, or the CAS or the OCL or children's lawyer or child protection, they get involved. These are people who are supposed to be looking out for the child's best interests. And these are people who are actually tasked with the mental health of your child.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not doing their parts because they also align themselves with the alienating parent.
Mm-hmm.
So when the court refers back to the person who is supposed to be the arm of the law, which is the children's lawyer or representative, then they are looking for these services from them. And then these people are making these recommendations to the courts.
Right.
And then that's where a lot of trouble, that's where we end up seeing a lot of trouble.
Right. I know the courts are starting to recognize parental alienation more than
Mhm.
they used to. And they're also finally doing something to the parent that causes the alienation.
It is happening. It's a very slow process. It is something where some judges have set precedents, and there is a recognition for parental alienation.
Yes.
But the problem we have right now is that there's a lot of denial, even to this day, about parental alienation and it not being a part of the DSM.
Hmm.
And one of the reasons why I really like doing the kind of advocacy that I do is I learn a lot from some of the experts. Dr. Childress is one of those experts who has kind of opened my eyes to what this parental alienation thing is. And a lot like Munchausen's syndrome, it's not recognized in the DSM, but the symptoms that they have are actually linked to actual mental health concerns.
Hmm.
So, parental alienation, which comes with child psychological abuse, is a diagnosable mental health disorder,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So, why is it that the mental health specialists who are assigned to your child not taking a look at these things?
Right.
Part of it is because they choose not to.
Yes.
So, they are actually becoming a part of the problem as well.
And then a lot of it too is you've got he says and she says,
Mhm.
and you don't have a lot of time in court to prove whatever. And the only way to resolve that is by the guardian ad litem or the child's lawyer.
Yep.
But in my experience, they don't delve deep enough. They sometimes make things worse because they do side with a parent. They like one parent better than the other. And again, they forget that it's about the child.
Absolutely. And this is again, Dr. Childress is somebody who I bring up because he's calling out his colleagues. He's basically saying that they know what the problem is, they just choose not to do anything about it.
Mhm.
But when you do bring something to them, it's like me basically saying, you know what, I'm going to the doctor. I've looked up the symptoms online, say through MD Health or whatever it is, and I'm bringing these symptoms forward to my doctor. My doctor is then in a position where the doctor can either take my word for it or they can run the tests.
Right.
They're refusing to run the tests.
Mhm.
So therefore there is going to be no solution.
Right.
And the as long as that continues, they're actually participating in the abuse.
I 100% agree.
They are funded by the public in order to do these investigations, and the public is not making enough of uproar about them not doing their assigned tasks. They're saying that in order for them to basically do a proper diagnosis of the child, the diagnosis is going to be very expensive. It's going to be anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000, right?
Mhm.
And that's just to get a diagnosis because it's not a one-day thing,
Right.
right? It's a transition over time. But there's also the parental. There's two sources that I look at when I talk about parental alienation. One is the Parental Alienation Study Group, which has
Mhm.
created a 5-factor model in order to determine what parental alienation actually is, and they also come with resources that you can basically look at, which are peer reviewed. Right?
Okay.
It's very important to have stuff that is peer reviewed.
Yes.
The other thing is Dr. Childress's checklist, parenting checklist, comes with 3 symptoms, and his checklist is based on the DSM criteria,
Mhm.
which I find to be a hell of a lot more efficient because the next thing that the person is going to have to do is they're going to have to try and fight the DSM on the
Right.
symptoms.
And I'm sure that you probably had the same thought I do with this, that to me it seems simple. And when I say that, it means you go to court,
Mhm.
you prove you have not seen your daughter in a year.
Mhm.
Your daughter is not old enough to drive, so she is relying on her mom to get her to meet you, or you go to the house to pick her up or whatever. That is simple, that, hey, he's not getting to see his kid, something needs to change.
Mhm.
But a lot of times it's just, oh, Miss So-and-so, you need to let Mr. So-and-so see the kid. And that's it. There's no repercussions for them doing that to you.
Mhm. Absolutely. So with that, there is one huge problem. Parental alienation is not something that happens overnight.
Right.
Parental alienation is a slow-moving process, and it requires the child to take the lead in the alienation, especially to reject the targeted parent. And so when you have people such as the guardian ad litem or children's lawyer or children's representative, they're given their powers through the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Right.
And for that, the child's voice is absolutely necessary in order to determine what's in the child's best interests.
Right.
But it doesn't replace the child's best interests. And an alienated child is not going to be able to speak to their own best interests.
Right. Just like if you had to go to a job where you had to bust your butt every day and make $15 an hour, or if you had a job where you could go sit on your butt all day and make $15 an hour, which one are you going to pick?
Yeah, absolutely. The one where I'm going to do the least work and make the most money.
Right. And the same thing a kid's going to pick, the path of least resistance.
Yes, absolutely. And so we do have that issue where we need qualified professionals who are able to speak to the children. I'm not a qualified professional. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a lawyer. So we rely on these people who are qualified psychologists. A qualified psychologist can do a diagnosis. A qualified psychologist can identify the symptoms.
Mhm.
And they know that this is a family systems issue. Family systems is very important because part of the family systems is you have a healthy child relationship where you have mom and dad in the same house with the child. And you'll probably sometimes see this little bubble where after there's a separation, there is mom in one bubble, dad in another bubble, and the child is connected at the bottom. That's still a healthy relationship.
Right. Like a Venn diagram.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But the unhealthy relationship is when mom is in one bubble and the child is aligned. And then there's a separation or an emotional cutoff of that child.
Right.
So to the father or to the mother.
Right.
Because it works both ways. There is no gender differential between in parental alienation. There are a lot of the bubbles, they show either one parent or the other, but that's anybody who understands what the bubble is basically saying is that this child has an emotional cutoff. There should be no emotional cutoff to any loving parent ever.
Exactly.
And the only way to make that work is through shared parenting. And blended families do play a huge role in basically making sure that the child's relationship is as comfortable as possible without crossing boundaries, right?
Right. There are times that I would say that a parent can be accused of parental alienation
Mhm.
just because they don't allow the other parent extra time with the child.
Right.
So just say bio dad gets little Susie every other weekend like he's supposed to.
Mhm.
He wants to get her on Wednesday through Friday. That's not what the court paper says. And mom says no.
Mhm.
Then it's, oh, you're alienating me.
Mhm.
No, she's not alienating him. He's still getting the kid.
Mhm.
She is just following the court order. And she may, or we'll say he, may have a reason that they don't think it's in the child's best interest to spend extra time with that parent.
Mhm. So when it comes to those kinds of things, I mean, we really seem to miss the mark on something. Courts are something that really, if two parents are good at communication, they would never need to step foot into a courtroom.
Right.
There's no such thing as court orders are simply things that are supposed to help create boundaries.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons.
Supposed to.
Yes. And the only, but the truth is, the children benefit from maximum time from both parents. And it is going to require cooperation from both parents in order to basically work out the child's schedule. Why do you
Mhm.
need a judge, somebody who really doesn't know your family, tell you how much time is appropriate for your kid? I mean, if the question should be, is there an availability or is there no availability?
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And and two level-headed parents can come up with a parenting arrangement or timeshare that makes sense.
Right. And that works for them and the kid.
Yes. And believe me,
Yes.
the children benefit from this because they enjoy this. So if it's mom's time or dad's time, and there's a birthday party that falls on that time, and the other parent wants to be able to take the child when it's not their time, it's going to require some sort of cooperation.
Right.
In order for the child to be, you have to be able to love your child more than you hate your ex.
Exactly. I say that all the time.
Yep.
That your hate for your ex outweighs the love for your kid.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's when your kid suffers.
Yeah. So it's one thing, in order to double down on your own time, you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible to the other parent as well. Again, because judges, lawyers, the courts, they're making a lot of money on you not being able to come to an agreement. And what is the purpose of court? They want you to come to an agreement.
Right.
So you're simply paying a lot of people to watch and eat popcorn while you're trying to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And
Or
if
to
you
scare
can't do
you
it,
into what needs to be done.
yeah, to steer you into what needs to be done. And so the two of you can open up a mediation agreement. The two of you can open up, there's a bunch of parenting apps such as Family Wizard,
Yeah.
Custody X. The two of you can come up with a parenting schedule, and you don't even need to talk to a lawyer. You don't even need to talk to a therapist. You don't need to talk to anybody who's going to make money off of the misery of the three of you. And it's the three of
Exactly.
you, right? So
Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of the family court system. I was drugged through it for 18 years. I won every time,
Mhm.
but I'm still not a fan of it. It needs to be revamped. There's a lot of personal feelings from lawyers and judges that play a role in the outcome of the hearing, which is not fair.
Mhm.
And again, I say this from a winning standpoint.
Yeah.
But I also see how the stress it takes on people, the financial part of how am I going to get the money to retain an attorney? He served me with papers again.
Mhm.
This money and this arguing is taking away from your kid.
Yep, it is.
You could send your kid to Harvard for what you paid in attorney's fees.
Absolutely.
And the attorney that's fighting with the other attorney, they're best buddies. They go drinking afterwards
Oh, yes. Yep.
with the
Yeah.
judge. Let's
Absolutely.
add that one in there.
Yeah. All three of them know that they're going to be seeing each other at some point in time, especially if they're in the same area working on the same cases. So that's one of the reasons why there's such a collaboration with lawyers and judges, and even the mental health experts. They actually know who to send to a case, right? So if a lawyer challenges a decision that is unpopular, you'll often find they'll back down and not do what would upset the judge, because then they have to go back in front of that same judge.
Right.
And so one of the biggest problems with family court system is, when you look at the statistics show that, this is their own self-reported statistics, by the way. If you go to familycourtjustice.ca, from the Justice Department itself, they're self-reporting that the statistics are 84% favorable decisions on the mom's side 12% for shared parenting, which is an embarrassment, and 6.6% for fathers.
Wow.
So if we were to build a company on this, we would definitely be screaming at the top of our lungs about discrimination.
Oh,
If
yes.
it was a gender thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that. The biggest
100%.
number is not the fact that the 6.6% should be higher. It's that the shared parenting is supposed to be the leading number.
Right.
When both parents are able to communicate, there should be no involvement with other parties.
Right.
There
And
should be
unfortunately, you know as well as I do, there are parents that can't communicate.
Yeah.
And I had one of those. My ex and I could not communicate.
Mm.
If it was fighting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And it could be something as simple as he wanted to switch times and I said, okay. And then he decided to change the time at the last minute.
Mhm.
And I said, well, I'm out of town because you told me, oh, I never told you that. You know, just the fighting, the constant fighting.
Mhm.
Or sends the kid home. Well, he told me, little Johnny told me that you said I was the B word.
Mhm.
You know, just don't bring your kids into that.
Yeah.
Don't. And if you can't get along with your ex, the best thing you can do is learn to parallel parent.
Yep.
And to not give in to the emails of them trying to push your buttons.
Right.
Treat it like a business, a bad business partner.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, and that's where these other little applications such as a Family Wizard and Custody X, they are basically great ways in order for you to keep track of the communication. And some of these things are accessible to the courts. I think Family Wizard is something that is accessible through the courts.
Yes.
Where the judge can see the kind of communication. So obviously you want to keep it civil, right?
Some people aren't smart enough to do that though.
They're not. They're not. But yeah, I think that we need to be able to embrace the technology that we have in order to help navigate shared parenting. We're at a level that we've never been at before.
Yeah.
We have so many tools at our disposal and things that we can use that there really is no excuse for not being able to co-parent, even with a high
Right.
conflict partner, right?
Right. Well, how long has it been since you've seen your daughter?
It's been 2 years. At least 2
And-
years, yeah.
And I guess from previous comments you made, she has said that she doesn't want to come see you.
That's correct. That is exactly where we're at right now. But again, it's something where the courts do feel that they need to listen to the child's wishes. But I am trying to convey to the courts that it is something where the child's wishes are being influenced.
Right.
They are not the child's genuine wishes.
Now, I know here in my state anyway, the court will hear the child's quote, quote, wishes through the guardian ad litem, but they never speak directly to the children.
Really? That's
Yeah.
actually a huge problem because I don't know how they're able to express the child's wishes without actually talking to the child.
Exactly. We've known several people that the child has wanted to go talk to the judge.
Yep.
And it was, no, you have to go through the guardian ad litem.
And there is a good
Now-
reason for that. There is a good reason. Your
Yes.
children should not be the ones to be the advocates in court. The parents are the ones who are the advocates, but the parents need to be able to have their voices heard as well.
Right.
I mean, the way that our system is set up here in Ontario is we have what's called the children's lawyer. The children's lawyer basically is supposed to speak to both parents, is supposed to speak to collaterals, and is supposed to speak to the child. And they are supposed to then create a report. But again, these reports, even when you're speaking to the child, you're still not getting the child's genuine wishes. What needs to be done is it needs to be considered in a totality. And the only way to do this is with family systems therapy. Family systems therapy is what this is considered to be a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Family systems therapy requires we listen to mom, We listen to dad. We listen to the child. We understand that there's an emotional cutoff. We understand that we have to fix the emotional cutoff, and we have to create a plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's what family systems is,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to basically being an advocate for your child, being a voice for your child, you have to understand, number one, that what's happening with your child is not personal. I don't take anything personal from our daughter because I know what she's had to go through,
Right.
right?
But it still breaks your heart.
It does.
It breaks my heart for you.
Thank you.
I can't imagine. It's like waking up every day. To me, I relate it to when my mom died.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up every day and reality hits.
Yeah.
But it's even harder because your daughter is physically here,
Yes. You
not
are
far
mourning,
from you.
yeah, you are mourning a child who is still alive.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for the targeted parents to basically do that, especially when you know that sometimes the child is put into a position where they are a participant in the conflict. And that's when you have to take a step back as a parent and say, no, I understand. I know that I have a genuine relationship with our daughter, one that the mother was not able to see,
Mhm.
because when we spent our times together, we had a lot of fun. There was a lot of smiles. There was a lot of laughter. There was a lot of playing. And we really enjoyed our time together.
Right.
She was a dad girl, right?
Mhm.
So it's not one where I'm going to turn around and look at this and all of a sudden vilify our daughter, because I know
Right.
our daughter is not the main player in this game. I understand that her allegations against me are pretty much something that has been coached.
Mhm.
I know that
I was gonna say brainwashed. Yeah.
it is. It's so knowing that it's child psychological abuse. Is our daughter to blame for that?
No.
Absolutely not.
No. I've talked to several people that have been alienated,
Mhm.
and a lot of them go down the path of drinking,
Mhm.
suicidal thoughts, attempts of suicide.
Mhm.
Their life just completely falls apart.
Mhm.
What gave you the strength for that not to happen to you?
So
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, and being a part of the shared parenting movement has helped that. I started with a little group called Fathers Resources in Toronto. The gentleman who ran the group, his name was Danny Gusby. He passed away. And he basically was the one who told us as fathers, your role as a parent is absolutely the most important role you'll ever have in your life. And you need to learn how to rip out the buttons that trigger you.
Mhm.
And for you to basically be able to love your child more than you hate your ex. That's where I got that from.
Yeah.
He basically was the one who showed us you don't have to be a doormat. You definitely do not want to be somebody who allows your boundaries to be crossed,
Mhm.
but you definitely want to be able to be soft enough to give that child the space so that they know when they grow up, they have a place to come back to.
Right, and we do see that a lot too,
Yes.
where when the child gets older, they're like, "Man, my mom kept me from my dad. I don't want anything to do with her."
Hmm.
And then they just go to the targeted parent.
Yep.
But at what point did you stop fighting?
I'm still fighting today. I'm in an appeals process. I'm actually taking a risk doing interviews. But the thing about it is I understand that a lot of people, what I'm trying to speak is I'm trying to speak not so much about my personal experiences, even though they do matter, but people need to understand the process and that the process itself should not hurt you. Okay. You have to be able to take care of yourself. I have a very supportive partner who always encourages me to take care of myself. And that's what I took the time in order to make sure that I didn't just jump back into the dating scene. I took the time in order to make sure that I didn't just introduce anybody and everybody to my child, right? So our daughter does have a very strong attachment to my partner. Our daughter has a very strong attachment. I built these relationships so that she has a very strong relationship with her siblings. Like, she doesn't have siblings, but I'm saying if they have siblings, you want to make sure that they have a close relationship with their siblings. Our daughter has a very strong relationship with her cousins and her aunts and her uncles and the rest of the support system that is there. So she doesn't necessarily need to feel the need to talk to me. I'm aware that right now that's a very difficult space for her,
Right.
but she definitely has the support system there.
So you have relatives, like, does she still see your mom and dad?
She's not able to see my mom and dad. Well, my ex does have a better relationship with my dad. She absolutely despises my mom.
Okay.
But our daughter is able to speak with her cousins.
Okay.
So it is something where she is able to share with her most trusted cousin the things that matter to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you've built that support system, it's not just for yourself; it's also for your kid, and that support system is needs to be a strong one.
Right. So you haven't been erased fully. And when I say that, I mean, a lot of times we see where they cut the child off from everybody on that side of the family.
And this is the thing. I believe that my ex would make that happen if that was possible. However, our daughter's connection with her cousins are so strong. I don't even think that her mother is in a position that's going to fly with our daughter.
Right. So the last conversation, or the last time you saw your daughter, well, let me back up. When I guess your daughter told you on the phone or maybe a text message, "Sorry, Dad, I don't want to come see you anymore."
Nope. Not even that. The last conversation I had with our daughter, I had dropped her off after March break, and she was there with myself and my partner. We had a group hug. We said we love each other. And then that was it.
Bam.
And bam. Before I know it, she had an argument, which was not between me and her, but with her parent, her mom. And then that led to a lot of allegations, which were not true, but have been repeated over and over and over again. So that's where that is. That's how the relationship broke down. And of course, there's not much that can be done about it other than to understand that this is not something that I see our daughter being in the lead role for. This is not something where I blame our daughter for anything. I know that our daughter loves me, loves my partner, loves her grandmother, loves everybody in my circle. And that I know that she is eventually going to be able to make sense of things.
Yeah.
Right now, she's very young.
Yeah, her brain's not even developed.
No.
Yeah, and they keep moving that age. So she's going to be 50 before her brain's develop fully to where she can. But I tell you, I think a lot of times what happens is sometime down the road, something's going to be said and something's going to click in her head. Then all of this is going to make sense.
Yeah.
And she's going to realize, wait a minute. And she's going to start questioning things. And then it'll be, wait a minute. My mom said this about my dad, and that wasn't true. What else did she say that wasn't true? Yeah. Did my dad really not want me around? Yeah. I'm just making up stuff because we don't know what she's told her.
No. And that's normally what happens. When it's very rare that an alienated child will come to their senses. But when they do, they are asking those questions. They are basically taking a look at things from a more adult perspective. And normally it's when they themselves become parents.
Yeah.
And it's when because we always say that we never want to be our parent. And then we find ourselves in the same situations that our parents did.
Yes.
And we have to make those decisions.
Yes.
We have to figure things out, right?
Right.
So,
and then once you have a child and you love that child so much,
yeah.
you think, I know my dad loved me.
Yep.
And then it's, I want my dad to be a part of my kid's life.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's a lot of maturity that has to happen with that. Not that your daughter's immature. She's just young.
She's very young right now. And the questions that are being asked of her is she is being asked to choose,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what is a child going to do? She's going to choose her familiarity.
Right.
She doesn't want to leave home. She doesn't want to leave her friends. She doesn't want to leave her schoolmates,
Right.
and or change schools. She wants to be left alone.
Right.
She wants to stay put.
Right. And she's probably afraid of, say, the consequences with you or how things would go if she did have to come back to see you every other weekend or whatever because of everything that's happened.
Absolutely. And it's something where, yes, absolutely, we would have to have a very long conversation.
Yeah.
But the thing about having that conversation is we should understand, especially if you're an alienated child, that a parent never stops loving that child, a parent who never stops thinking about that child. And that my role as a parent is to create that safe space.
Right. Whenever it may be needed.
Whenever it's needed, in order to basically be able to come back and reconcile. And it's not something where I need to hear an apology or anything like that. I know what's going on.
Right.
I don't need an apology. And then there's also the big question is should targeted parents apologize to their alienated child? And that's a very strong thing to have to think about. I mean, targeted parents do make mistakes as well. Absolutely. Right. We have to be mature enough in order to recognize those mistakes and apologize for them.
Right.
But
so
you should never, ever, ever apologize for things you did not do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So do you still send birthday cards? You know, like I said, we've talked to a lot of alienated parents, and unfortunately, I actually know a few that have committed suicide because they just felt like life wasn't worth going on. And several of them would say, I still send cards. I don't get any response, but I still keep sending cards, and I'm going to till the day I die. And then some are like, I can't do it anymore, man. I just can't do this. Sending the card has hopes of me hearing back from them, then I don't hear back from them, and it's like it's all just starting over again.
Yeah.
So I think you have to figure out what works best for you for your mental health.
100%. And that's what I was going to say is, you know your child best. You know how you can communicate. I know how our daughter is still connected on social media and through even this thing called Roblox.
Yep.
If you've got young children, you probably know what Minecraft and Roblox are.
Yes.
And it's ways to communicate as well if they're open to communication. And our daughter is connected on social media for communication, which every now and then, like, you know, I'm able to see what she's up to. She's recently won a volleyball tournament, so she got a silver medal in it. So I'm very
that's great
for that. But
you know better than to comment, right?
I do. I basically said, you know, congratulations. I'm very happy for you, right? Because she needs to understand that I have not given up and that I do cherish that communication, even if she's not being very open with that communication.
Right. Even if she doesn't respond, I guess my fear and why I would say is you know better than not to comment is because a lot of times when the targeted parent comments, they get blocked.
Yes, they do. And
yeah,
I've been blocked on some avenues, but this one avenue that I'm able to see her social media hasn't been completely blocked. So
that's good.
Yeah.
And then you don't know if it's her blocking you or bio mom either.
When I basically see things that are negative occurring, I already understand and I already have that understanding. The negativity is not coming from our daughter.
Yeah.
It's coming from another source. And that source is not necessarily what I'm going to focus on.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm going to focus on our daughter, and I'm going to focus on being able to say, hello, how you doing? Happy birthday. Congratulations on your game, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
These are ways. And that's another thing that Denny, before he passed away, he told us, you can basically write a bunch of cards, get a bunch of gifts, and even if you send them, they send them back, whatever. As long as you are able to say that, you thought about them in their birthday, you thought about them, and you're able to, because they will someday come around. And believe me, if you thought your ex was difficult to deal with, your kid's thinking the same thing too.
You're right. You're right. It doesn't take them long to see the truth.
They will come back to you, and they will basically be like, did you fight for me? It's something where you don't want to be able to say that you didn't, you gave up.
Right.
And the way that you do that is you are able to do these little things, right? Take care of your health, go to the gym. So this way you have a healthy parent to give to your kid when they come back.
Right.
Make sure that you like the activities you guys used to do, going swimming, basically going to the games or whatever it is, right?
Right.
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so hard. And again, my heart goes out to you and anyone else experiencing parental alienation. It is abuse. There is no doubt. And it is not only abuse on the kid, but it's a type of abuse on the parent that's being targeted to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. We appreciate you sharing your story and giving us some tips for those parents that are alienated on how to keep on going and not to let it consume them in a negative way.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And if someone wants to reach out to you, how's a way that they can find you?
So
now, if you don't want to say this since you're in the middle of the court thing, that's fine.
Yeah. Again, we were able to get communication through Malicious Moms and Parental Alienation, the Facebook group.
Okay.
I am also working with a small group in Canada to basically create a Canada-wide organization that, in order to raise awareness of parental alienation, is called CPAC. Okay.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. And we are working together in order to get a couple of members together, it's mostly for Canadians, but definitely people are able to donate. And those donations are going to help people become a part of the board and make decisions and move forward and in trying to create something tangible for alienated parents.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So those are some of the ways. Yeah. And there's a couple of other groups that I'm a part of. Dad Talk Canada. And yeah. But mostly I would say probably Malicious Moms and Parental Alienation is where we, I guess, connected. So it's a good spot.
Okay.
For people to just reach out.
Well, you keep fighting for yourself and you keep doing what you're doing to help others fight.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nacho Kids Podcast. Find us online at nachokids.com. Until next time, remember, life is good when you nacho.